Imagine walking into a modern 21st century classroom today. You look around and you see these $3,000 interactive screens glowing at the front of the room.
Right, the really flashy setups.
Exactly. Every single student is hunched over a sleek tablet, the school's Wi-Fi is blazing fast, and all the textbooks are just loaded into the cloud. It looks like the absolute cutting edge of education.
It really does. I mean, on the surface.
Yeah, but if you look a little closer, you might realize something actually pretty shocking. Absolutely nothing about the actual learning process has changed since, like, 1985.
It is a phenomenal illusion. I mean, we have this collective blind spot, right? We tend to think that if we load a classroom or even, a corporate training room up with expensive gadgets, we're automatically engaging in 21st century learning.
Yeah, we totally equate shiny new tools with deeper cognitive development.
Exactly. But it's just not true.
And as a dedicated learner, you are probably always looking for the most effective ways to absorb new information, right? You think about your habits, your note-taking, your focus. But today, we are completely flipping the script.
Yeah, we are.
We aren't looking at how you absorb information. We're looking at how that information is delivered, how it is designed, and how the very environments we learn in might actually be holding us back.
Because you can have the absolute best learning habits in the world, but if the foundational design of the lesson you are participating in is flawed, you are hitting an artificial ceiling.
Right.
The delivery mechanism is basically dictating the limit of your understanding.
Okay, let's unpack this. The mission for today's deep dive is to explore a specific framework designed to shatter that artificial ceiling. It's called the Four Shifts Protocol, created by researchers Scott McLeod and Julie Graber.
Yeah, it's a really powerful tool.
And we have a fantastic stack of sources to guide us today, including a deep look at the mechanics of the protocol itself, a really revealing EdSurge interview with McLeod, and some detailed modules breaking down contemporary pedagogical models.
So much good stuff in there.
Yeah. We are going to explore why loading up on expensive gadgets often changes absolutely nothing about learning, and how this deceptively simple framework can transform education from mere regurgitation into solving actual real-world community problems.
Which is the ultimate goal, right?
Exactly. But before we get to the solution, we have to talk about the trap. Like, what is the fundamental problem in modern learning environments?
Well, the primary problem is this massive, highly visible gap between intention and day-to-day reality. I mean, if you read the mission statements of most school systems or even corporate development programs today, they are incredibly lofty, very visionary.
Oh, yeah, they sound fantastic on a brochure.
They really do. They talk about creating critical thinkers, problem solvers, global citizens, collaborative innovators, all those buzzwords. But then, as Scott McLeod points out in his interview, you walk down the halls of these schools, you sit in on the classes, and despite those forward-thinking mission statements, the reality looks overwhelmingly traditional.
Just rows of desks.
Yeah. It is still heavily driven by a teacher standing at the front of the room, delivering a lecture, or, students quietly doing isolated textbook work.
But wait, like I mentioned in the beginning, I've been in these modern classrooms. They are packed with screens. That has to count for something, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are just using chalk and slates anymore.
Right, but what you are witnessing is a phenomenon McLeod calls digital substitution. Many schools, and businesses for that matter, believe they are future-ready simply because they have inserted technology into their workflow.
Right.
But if you analyze the actual task being performed, they are basically just creating digital counterparts to analog work.
So they are swapping out a traditional dusty chalkboard for that $3,000 interactive whiteboard, but the teacher is still just standing up there lecturing in the exact same one-way format.
Exactly. Or, instead of handing out a physical paper worksheet, the teacher has the students download a Google Doc, type their answers into the digital blanks, and submit it through Google Classroom.
Wow. Yeah, it's the exact same thing.
Or instead of rolling in a heavy TV on a metal cart to watch a VHS tape, the teacher just clicks a link to a YouTube video. The physical tools have evolved dramatically, but the pedagogy, the actual method, practice, and psychology of teaching has not shifted an inch.
The underlying cognitive task for the student is absolutely identical.
Precisely.
It sounds like buying a state-of-the-art Wi-Fi-enabled smart oven,
Yeah.
but only ever using it to heat up frozen Pop-Tarts.
That is a perfect analogy, yes.
You have this incredible piece of machinery capable of culinary magic,
Yeah.
and you're just using it to slightly warm up a pastry.
Yeah.
But wait, doesn't the SAM model say the exact opposite? I mean, in the world of education tech, SAMMAR, which stands for Substitution, Augmentation, Modification, and Redefinition, is like the famous framework everyone talks about.
Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere.
And the whole idea is to climb that ladder so that you are using technology to do things we couldn't possibly do before. Isn't that the ultimate goal?
Well, this is where the expert analysis in our sources really dissects the issue, because that assumption is exactly where the trap lies. McLeod actually calmly dismantles the SAMR model as the ultimate goal for educators.
Really? How so?
He points out a crucial flaw in how we apply it. SAMR is a technology continuum. It is not a learning continuum.
Oh, wow. That is a massive distinction. I need to wrap my head around that.
Think about an activity mentioned in the EdSurge interview called Mystery Skype. Have you heard of that?
Right. I saw that in the sources. And I have to admit, it sounds incredibly engaging. Two classrooms, maybe on opposite sides of the country, connect on video chat, and they have to guess each other's geographical location by asking 20 yes or no questions.
Yeah, that's the one.
Before high-speed internet, you could never do that in real time. So that hits the absolute highest level of the SAMR model, right?
Yeah.
Redefinition. Technology is allowing for a totally new task. So what is wrong with that?
Well, it is highly engaging, for sure, and the kids are definitely having fun. But let's look at the actual learning taking place. You can use technology to do something you couldn't do before, which puts you high on that SAMR scale, but it can still be incredibly low-level thinking.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
With Mystery Snipe, you just spent 50 minutes of valuable instructional time for perhaps 60 kids across 2 different classrooms, guessing a location using binary yes or no questions.
It's essentially a trivia game.
Exactly. It requires very little cognitive complexity, zero complex problem solving, and no deep analysis.
So we've used our supercomputer smart oven to make a slightly more interactive Pop-Tart.
Yeah. You are doing something novel, but you aren't doing something deep. The technology is redefining the activity, but it is not redefining the learning.
Which means if Mystery Skype is a dead end for deep learning, we have to find a way to fix it. We need a framework that focuses on the learning continuum, not just the tech continuum. And that brings us directly into the mechanics of the 4 shifts protocol. So let's explore how this protocol actually forces a change in the classroom, starting with the first 2 dimensions, deepening and connecting.
So the first shift, deepening, is all about the move from mere consumption and recall to creation and higher-level thinking. The protocol explicitly looks for evidence that students are operating on the upper levels of frameworks like Bloom's taxonomy or Webb's depth of knowledge.
Just to clarify for anyone listening who hasn't been to Teachers College, those frameworks essentially map out how we process information, right?
Right.
Meaning moving from the bottom level, which is just memorizing and repeating facts, up to the highest levels, which involves analyzing information, evaluating arguments, and actually creating new original ideas.
That is a perfect summary. And the protocol asks diagnostic questions to ensure that upward movement. It asks, are students engaging in complex, messy problem solving? Are they designing or creating something unique?
Or are they just repeating what the teacher said?
Exactly. Are they doing real critical thinking, or are they just repeating a synthesis that was already provided to them?
Which completely explains why Mystery Skype fails the deepening test. There is no messy problem solving, it's just recalling geographical facts.
Right.
But that leads us to the second shift in the protocol, which is connecting. This means moving from isolated, siloed academic work into integrated learning and authentic work.
Yes, breaking out of the bubble.
It's about breaking down the 4 walls of the classroom so students can engage with relevant local, national, or even international communities.
So let's apply those first 2 shifts, deepening and connecting, to redesign that Mystery Skype lesson.
Oh, I like this.
We use the protocol as an engine for change. We know the original lesson lacks deep critical thinking and complex problem solving. So to fix it, we have to fundamentally change the task.
So instead of asking yes or no questions to guess a location, what if we use that exact same video connection to form collaborative work teams that span across both classrooms?
Now you are utilizing the technology for a completely different pedagogical purpose. You identify shared community problems.
Right.
Maybe you have 2 students in classroom A and 2 students in classroom B, and their specific team is tasked with analyzing and addressing water quality issues in their respective towns.
Oh, wow.
Or another interclassroom group is looking at how to decrease the number of hungry people in their communities by comparing local food bank supply chains.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the task is completely transformed. We went from a geography trivia game to an authentic, meaningful dialogue about real-world issues.
They are collaborating, researching, problem-solving.
But the sources actually provide an even more extreme and, frankly, amazing example of what this looks like in the real world when a school goes all in. I want to talk about the Iowa Big School.
Yes. Located in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, it is a prime example of the connecting shift realized to its absolute fullest potential.
The setup alone is fascinating. The students spend half their day at their traditional mothership high school, doing their standard coursework, fulfilling their basic requirements.
Right, the normal stuff.
But the other half of the day, they are at the Iowa Big facility, doing completely authentic work for local nonprofits, government agencies, and businesses. And we aren't talking about fetching coffee or filing papers as interns.
No, not at all.
The projects cited in our sources are mind-blowing. These high school students are redesigning actual schools alongside local architects. They're building aquatic drones.
It's incredible.
They're creating custom utensils for amputees. And they even organized the community's first entrepreneurship conference for girls and women.
And we need to look at why this matters so much, using the specific vocabulary of the 4 shifts protocol. Under the authentic work section, the protocol asks 2 vital questions of any lesson.
Okay, what are they?
Are students utilizing domain practices? And are they using domain technologies?
Meaning, are they doing what the professionals do with the actual tools the professionals use?
Exactly. Are they behaving like actual historians, empirical scientists, licensed architects, and business professionals? Or are they doing some artificial, dumbed-down classroom version of that work?
Which usually they are.
Right. But take the aquatic drone project at Iowa Big. They aren't just snapping together a pre-made Lego kit from a textbook. They are sourcing electronic parts, writing complex code, consulting with environmental scientists to understand water toxicity sensors, and presenting their findings.
Wow.
They are using computer-aided design software, which is domain technologies, and engaging in iterative prototyping, which are domain practices.
That is the ultimate form of connecting and deepening. I mean, they never have to sit in the desk and whine, why do I need to know this math formula? Because the relevance is staring them right in the face.
Right.
If they don't get the formula right, the drone literally sinks.
The motivation becomes intrinsic. The work matters to the real world, so it matters to the student.
Which brings up a really obvious question for me, and probably for you listening right now. If doing real-world work like building aquatic drones and designing public spaces is so incredibly effective, and the kids clearly respond to it with massive enthusiasm, why isn't every single school doing it?
Oh.
This transitions us to the 3rd shift of the protocol, empowering. This is the shift from teacher-centered, standards-driven classrooms to student-centered, learner-driven environments.
And this is where we hit the most significant roadblock in modern education. The sticking point isn't a lack of funding, and it isn't a lack of technology. The sticking point is human psychology.
Oh, interesting.
As McLeod notes in the EdSurge interview, giving students real agency is the single biggest challenge for educators. He states very bluntly that adults have freakish control needs.
Freakish control needs, that is quite a phrase.
It is provocative, but he argues that schools violate student agency on an hourly basis. Teachers, administrators, and the system at large are inherently terrified to give up control. They are terrified to let students drive their own learning path, and crucially, they are terrified to let students make mistakes, even though failure is a scientifically necessary part of the learning process.
I mean, it's crazy to think about how much control a teacher actually hoards without realizing it. The 4 shifts protocol doesn't just broadly say give students agency. It gives you very specific, probing, diagnostic questions to evaluate who is really in charge.
Exactly.
When you actually look at a standard lesson, who usually selects what is being learned?
The teacher.
Right, and who selects how the students will demonstrate their knowledge or how they will be assessed?
Always the teacher. The system is designed for compliance, not agency.
Yeah.
During a lesson, the teacher is the primary driver of the talk time. They decide the pacing of the work. They pick the technology being used.
The student's just a passenger on a rigidly scheduled train. But wait, let me play devil's advocate here. I am imagining a room full of 30, 15-year-olds. Isn't handing over all of that decision-making, letting them choose what technology is used, how they are assessed, and who drives the talk, isn't that just inviting absolute chaos?
I mean, that's the fear, right?
Doesn't the teacher need to steer the ship to ensure they actually learn something and don't just, watch TikTok for an hour?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of the protocol, we find the built-in safeguard against that exact chaos. And that safeguard is a concept called metacognition. Giving students agency doesn't mean you just throw them the keys to a sports car and walk away.
Thank goodness.
It is more like teaching someone to drive using one of those student driver cars.
Whoa, the ones with the passenger side brake pedal for the instructor.
Exactly. The teacher moves to the passenger seat. The student is steering, but the teacher is there to guide, ask questions, and hit the brake if things go off a cliff.
Okay, I like that visual.
And the mechanism they use to guide the student is metacognition, which is essentially thinking about thinking. The protocol explicitly asks, do students have the opportunity to reflect on their planning, their thinking, their work, and their progress?
Right.
And more importantly, can the students identify what they are learning, not just what they are doing?
Oh, that is a brilliant distinction.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. If a student at Iowa Big says, I'm building an aquatic drone, that is merely what they are doing.
Right.
But metacognition requires them to pause, reflect, and say, by building this drone, I am learning applied fluid dynamics, electrical engineering, and collaborative project management.
The agency is tied directly to their awareness of their own cognitive growth. The teacher isn't lecturing. The teacher is constantly asking the student to articulate their learning process. It is not a free-for-all. It is heavily scaffolded, deeply intentional independence.
So we have deepening, connecting, and empowering. The question then becomes, how do we actually pull this off in a normal school? Like, how do we implement this without completely overwhelming a veteran teacher who has spent 20 years using traditional lecture methods?
It's a huge shift.
If you hand a teacher a massive checklist and tell them to completely reinvent their classroom by Monday, they are going to panic.
They absolutely will. And that brings us to the fourth and final shift, accelerating, which is also known as technology infusion. This shift defines the proper, highly targeted role of technology.
Okay.
Remember the digital substitution trap from the beginning. We aren't just using tech to digitize old worksheets. Here, technology, whether it is AI research tools, global communication platforms, or digital simulations, acts as a massive lever. It puts the first three shifts into high gear.
It is the accelerator pedal for deepening the thought process, connecting to the real world, and empowering the student.
Yes. And the key diagnostic question here is vital for any implementation. Does the technology add value so students can do their work in better or different ways? Or does the tool actually mask, overshadow, and draw focus away from important learning?
So how does a school leader actually get teachers to start making these shifts without causing a revolt? Our sources include this great piece by Patrick Larkin detailing his unlearning journey.
Oh, I love that part.
He attended an executive institute where they introduced this exact protocol. And the expert advice from McLeod on how to introduce this to teachers was very clear. Do not try to answer all the protocol questions at once.
It is simply too much information to process. So Larkin's group practiced by evaluating someone else's lesson first to remove the personal defensiveness.
Which is so smart.
Right. They watched a video of a high school geometry class and reviewed the lesson plan. And they only focused on 4 very specific bullet points under the authentic work section.
They just looked at the lesson and asked, is the work real or fake?
Ooh.
Does the student have an authentic role? Are they using domain practices? Are they using domain technologies?
Exactly, just those 4.
And their first step was just to discuss it in small groups and grade the geometry lesson.
Yes.
No, or somewhat.
But the true magic of the 4 shifts protocol, as Larkin points out, didn't happen in the grading phase. It happened in the second step. They took those diagnostic questions and they reframed them into design questions.
This is such a practical takeaway for anyone trying to improve a process. Instead of just looking at the geometry worksheet and saying, no, this work isn't reflective of what experts do outside of school, which is just a dead-end criticism, they reframed it.
They flipped it.
They asked, what could we do to make this student work more reflective of what experts do?
They turned a critique into a brainstorming session for lesson redesign.
And the results are incredible. Instead of just calculating the area of abstract triangles on a piece of paper, they redesigned the geometry lesson. So the students were calculating the exact angles, slope requirements, and material costs needed to build a new ADA-compliant wheelchair ramp for the school's auditorium.
That's amazing.
They went from fake work to authentic work in one brainstorming session.
You take one small piece of a lesson, you apply a few targeted questions from the 4 shifts, and you iterate. You slowly transition the learning experience away from rote recall and toward genuine, agentic, authentic work.
Yeah.
It makes the monumental task of changing an educational culture feel entirely manageable.
So what does this all mean for you? If you are the learner, whether you are navigating K-12 education, higher ed, corporate training, or just designing your own self-directed learning journey, the 4 shifts protocol is a lens you can apply right now to your own life. Look at the digital modules your HR department is making you click through, the professional development seminars you're sitting in, or the online courses you're taking to learn a new skill.
Ask yourself those probing questions. Are you experiencing deepening? Are you moving beyond factual recall into critical thinking and complex problem solving?
Right.
Are you experiencing connecting? Is the work authentic and tied to the real world, using the actual domain practices and technologies of the field you want to master?
Are you empowered? Do you have agency over what, how, and why you are learning, with a heavy dose of metacognitive reflection? Or are you just blindly following a rigid track?
Yeah.
And finally, is the technology you're using accelerating your learning, or is it just digital substitution? Are you just using a fancy smart oven to heat up a frozen Pop-Tart?
It is a powerful, paradigm-shifting way to evaluate the quality of the learning environments you are participating in, or the ones you are tasked with designing for others. It completely changes your standard for what constitutes good learning.
It really does.
Yeah.
But it also leaves us with a pretty massive, lingering question. We've talked about Iowa Big, about high school students building aquatic drones and designing public schools. We've seen the power of engaging in this deeply authentic, interdisciplinary work where students have true agency over their learning path.
Yeah.
But we still exist in a reality heavily governed by standardized metrics,
The current system is built on standardization.
which creates a profound friction. So here is something for you to mull over after this deep dive ends, as you think about the future of education. If the 4 shifts protocol demands authentic, interdisciplinary work, messy problem solving, and true student agency, is it fundamentally at odds with our current system of high-stakes standardized testing?
That is the million-dollar question.
Standardized tests inherently demand uniform, predictable, lower-level recall. Can deeper, connected learning truly thrive inside the traditional mothership high school alongside those rigid tests? Or will frameworks like the 4 shifts protocol inevitably force us to realize that the old house can't be renovated and we have to tear down and rebuild the entire educational system from scratch?